This is the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and hitting subscribe on your friend's phone without them knowing. Coming to you from the Kitchen Studios in downtown Raleigh. This episode is sponsored in part by Spot On, tech that helps your business grow. Request a demo at spoton.com. And Joe Van Gogh Coffee, serving the community from seed to cup, taking particular care at every step to honor the beans. And now, they can't cook and they don't clean, but they love to tell you how it's done. It's Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today there will be no Ted Lassoing the peanut butter, you know, where he scoops it with his finger. You'll take out your big spoon and take a big, chewy, delicious lick of Big Spoon Roasters nut butters. And here to tell us all about it is their founder, Mark Overbay.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Do you get the reference? You know, Ted Lasso, he says he keeps the peanut butter jar open.
Yeah, we get it.
Why are you yaying me? Like, you don't like the reference? You don't like Ted Lasso?
I get it. They can't all be winners, Matt.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good one. We'll give you a C- on that one. But yeah,
I think it was better than your Ozarks reference in a previous episode.
Yes. And, and speaking of not just previous, but upcoming episodes.
Oh. What? Are Pete Davidson and Joe Rogan?
That's not even going to come through on the headphones because you can't hear it. It was supposed to be it was one, Brian, for those that can't hear on the microphone, it was Brian's outtake of our intro. It said, special guest hosts Joe Rogan and Pete Davidson, because they were like the two trending Twitter people on April Fool's that actual day. And we thought, how stupid, we'll just put them on there.
What an April Fool's.
And I forgot to hit mute on that thing because I'm a professional over here. Speaking about being so professional, we do have some amazing upcoming episodes that you're going to love, such as Queen's Order Honey with Justin Orders coming out of Charlotte. I can't wait for all that bee talk. It's going to be great. And then Chef Saif Rahman of Vidrio is going to come in here, teach us a little bit about how to cook. And then we have Nick Singh of the Nomad in Hillsborough, as well as the Viceroy in Durham, a fun little Indian English pub in Durham, and Kevin McLaughlin of Lorema Coffee in Rocky Mount. We're all over the place, everybody, but right now we're right back in Durham. Even though we're not in Durham, we're going to talk about a business that comes from Durham, from Mark, from your brain, from all the things that you've done. Welcome back. Hello, and welcome in the studio.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. Can I speak to that Ted Lasso
Please.
thing for a
Yeah.
second?
Yeah, defend it, please.
Well, number one, for anyone that knows anything about food safety, the whole open jar of peanut butter and then walking by and putting your finger in it whenever you feel like it, that's super triggering and honestly dangerous. I have a couple of food safety certifications, and we just went through our annual third-party food safety audit. We did awesome on it, but that kills me every time I saw that.
You hear that, Apple TV? He's got a class action lawsuit set up. Big spoon against big jar.
They're teaching the wrong thing to kids.
Yeah, but what if it's your it's only your jar of peanut butter and like nobody else is going in?
Yeah, if you sign something, it's like, if you enter this house, you cannot touch the peanut butter.
Right.
It's probably
then
safe.
it's okay.
But otherwise, you're opening yourself up to dangerous lawsuits.
Yeah. I will also, Matt, speaking to that, a lot of listeners don't know, and who knows if this will ever even see the light of day or hear the light of day, but I've been moonlighting as a host in a podcast with two urologists called the Masters of Manhood, and Elizabeth knows what I'm talking about, but they have it's a great little show that talks about like the men's general area that we don't discuss a lot about, and I've learned some fascinating things. And one of them, they said, for all the men that want to manscape with a razor and they want to hit it in the undercarriage and just kind of clean up down there, be very careful about the razor that you use, because you can get airborne.
You're talking like a Bic razor, like a shaver? Who does that?
A lot of people like a very shorn scrotum. It's very nice.
No, that's fine, but who wouldn't use one of like
a guard?
Like a guard,
well,
or
that's
a
what they
manscaper, or
But they said because that particular area has a lot of ridges and bumps, that you can easily cut it, and the razor itself because it sits in the shower and it's just laying there, can get so much bacteria on it that they see not just once or twice.
What?
Elizabeth backed me up. They said this is a common occurrence.
Elizabeth, back me up.
She's nodding her head yes.
Medically, as an EMT in your former days, you've seen this a lot.
But like they talked about, it becomes no, what's the type of flesh-eating bacteria to where it literally like, I have no other way to say this.
Disintegrates
your ball
sack.
starts getting taken away.
Oh my God.
And like they have to remove everything and like skin graft.
Why are we talking about this on the...
Because you shouldn't put your finger inside of a peanut butter jar. That's what we're saying. But let's talk about just how we should just eat and enjoy nut butters instead with Mark.
I feel like we should also say if you do try that kind of scaping at home, make sure there's not an open jar of peanut butter in the area.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Because that might confuse the issue.
Something could get in the jar and do that.
You know, on the next season of Ted Lasso, there's going to be a whole like recounting of that story.
My truth.
Including of manscaping, however Ted Lasso might do it. But
well, I'm starting off right now because I'm hungry as hell. I'm tearing in.
Can we see it? Can we see it?
To a big spoon cherry chocolate. Let's see. Let's get that up there because we're on camera, folks. You can see us and hear us. But I haven't had breakfast yet, and I'm dying. And Mark was so generous to bring these in that. Matt, you want to have a little piece?
Yeah.
So we're obviously a nut butter business, but we've been making these handmade bars from our first days. When I started making nut butter in 2010, after 10 years after my Peace Corps experience, which I can go into more detail on that.
Yes, please.
But I recently met my then girlfriend, now wife and business partner, Megan, and she was a competitive triathlete, and a lot of her friends were endurance athletes, and they trained together, and she was making homemade energy bars with peanut butter as the base. And so when I started making my own peanut butter, she started incorporating that into her recipes, and they became even more in demand. And people were like, you got to sell these, alongside the nut butter. And we started selling those bars at the Carborough Farmers Market in that spring of 2011. And there would be like 4 or 5 people waiting at the opening bell, the same people every week to buy all the bars because they were so labor intensive to make. We would only have like 3 dozen or so every Saturday. So it took us a little while longer to learn how to scale that side of the business. But yeah, we sell bars all over the country now and a little bit internationally.
That's delicious.
That's just a tasty bar.
That's just like the right kind of salty, crunch, and sweet. Everything perfectly melded into one.
Thank you. A little Jason Sudeikis, Ted Lasso connection on the bars. Saturday Night Live has featured our bars as a backstage snack for years.
Wow.
I don't think they have since COVID, but for 3 or 4 years leading up to COVID, they stuck them backstage.
Okay, did you send them bars? Did they just buy them because Jason Sudeikis loved them? Like, how did that happen?
No, I don't think Jason Sudeikis had anything to do with it. I don't think, but
be a better story. As Max always says, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, no. My uncle Lauren. No, I'm just kidding. No, I have a friend. This amazing guy named Tom Monday. That's his real name. And he has this business called Small Batch America, and their whole mission is to find cool small batch food companies around the country.
That have days of the week in their name. Oh, let's go Saturday Night Live. That works. Mr. Monday.
Excellent connection.
Yeah.
And he used to work in the music industry, and he has all these awesome connections in that world too. And he started out kind of catering music festivals with small batch American-made foods. And so we've done a bunch of like South by Southwest parties through him, and Newport Folk Festival, Solid Sound, Wilco's thing in Massachusetts, and I think word just got out through the artist about how good the food he curated was, and I'm not sure how the Saturday Night Live thing happened, but that happened, and then the Colbert Show featured our almond butter as the green room snack.
That's so cool.
Well, because it's delicious. So let's get into this. So you. Just looking through some of your your LinkedIn page, I saw that you spent some time not with Joe Van Gogh Coffee, which is where you should have been because they're fantastic and an amazing company, and we're drinking delicious Joe Van Gogh coffee. More on that later. But you worked with counterculture for like almost a decade, right, or for a good while?
A little over 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your role there?
Well, when I first started, I focused on web sales. Like this was in the end of 2005, and counterculture had been around for 10 years. They were already well known, but mainly wholesale. Like they mainly sold to coffee shops and restaurants. They were known for their culinary coffee blends. Like there was a Magnolia Grill blend, for those of you who know Magnolia Grill.
Oh yeah,
The
shout out
Barkers.
to Ben Barker.
Absolutely. Nana's had a blend, and all these Pops in Durham had a blend, and Irregardless in Raleigh. I can go on. But they were just sort of transitioning to a consumer-focused brand and had launched an e-commerce website. And I think they were just a little overwhelmed by the traffic coming in and syncing up the website with production. And I didn't really have a lot of experience doing that, but I did have experience in marketing communications through mainly nonprofits and organizations in the food world. Like I was a director of communications for the United Fresh Produce Association in DC for a couple of years, and I worked for the American Diabetes Association's national office doing nutrition communications, and then a consulting firm as a staff writer. And I discovered counterculture and just got connected to them, and I was already really interested in coffee, and so just drove down to Durham one day from DC and interviewed, and they hired me, and it was a very entrepreneurial position. Like counterculture, even though they've been around for 10 years, still had kind of a startup, like scrappy mentality at the time. I think there were only about 20 employees back then. And it was like, let's grow e-commerce, go. And it was awesome. I mean, I love that company, and I love the coffee community. I'm friends with Robbie at Joe Van Gogh, and I love what they've done. And so, I was at Counterculture for about 6 years when one day I was in my backyard. I bought my first house ever in Durham, this little 2-bedroom house in the Duke Park neighborhood, and I was sanding a piece of wood that was going in as trim, and I got hungry for my favorite snack, which is fresh slices of apples and peanut butter. This was in the fall of 2010. Mm-hmm. And rather than thinking about just the peanut butter I had in my pantry or, what I could go buy at Whole Foods, I thought about the peanut butter that I made in Zimbabwe when I was in the Peace Corps in 1999 and 2000. I was there just as a Peace Corps volunteer. I lived in a super rural community, even by Zimbabwean standards, no running water, no electricity. And there was food to eat. Like everyone there was a subsistence farmer, and there were lots of food to eat. But I really missed peanut butter. It was one of my favorite foods my entire life, and I'd probably not gone a few days without eating peanut butter until that point. And you don't realize how much you're going to miss something until you don't have it. But luckily, the community where I live grew peanuts. They grew a type of peanut they call ground nuts that are really close to the runner variety peanut that grows here in the American Southeast and throughout the Americas. And a lot of people just roasted them over open fires and crushed them by hand with stones, like a mortar and pestle. And they usually stirred that into a stew, like a meat or vegetable stew, to add thickness and fat and awesome texture. Some people just ate them as snacks. I saw that smashing of them with mortar and pestle, and I was like, that's just one step away from peanut butter.
Yeah.
And so I bartered for some peanuts and the whole setup. I roasted some over an open fire, and with stones, I mashed them, and then added a little honey and sea salt, and then a thimble full of coconut oil, kind of to help it emulsify, because you're there for an hour pounding with stones to get that to come together. But when it did come together, it was so good. It was like the best thing I'd ever tasted. Part of it was because I hadn't had peanut butter in a year. But also it was just so fresh and amazing. I'd never had peanut butter that even came close to that. I grew up eating, like most Americans, Peter Pan, Jif, and maybe Smucker's on occasion. But this was just something on another level. It's like, you grow up eating a really basic version of I don't know the right analogy, but maybe mass-produced monoculture tomatoes, and then you have that first incredibly juicy, perfectly ripe heirloom tomato, and you see how good a food can be. And it was an epiphany. I didn't think about, I'm going to go back and start a business around this. That was the last thing I thought of. It didn't enter my mind at all, but it did change the way I thought about all the packaged food in a grocery store.
Yeah.
Because it showed me that with super basic technology, literally an open fire and some rocks, I could make a better version of this like staple food that multi-billion-dollar corporations are churning out by the millions of jars a day.
Yeah.
Just with the care to like actually make something delicious and fresh ingredients, and then a little bit of know-how, like a little bit of craft. And that was it. That planted the seed that then sprouted 10 years later when I was in Durham.
So how did it? I have so many questions about that because when you look on the back of a peanut butter jar, and we all buy, if you have kids, or not even if you have kids, if you just like peanut butter and you look on the back, there's not many ingredients, right? Like mostly it's just peanuts and salt, and then there's, I don't know, a couple of other additives. So when you look in the back of a Big Spoon Roasters peanut butter jar, what do you see? Exactly what you said, the honey, the cocoa.
Really simple ingredients, but I think one thing that sets us apart is the work that we put into sourcing the ingredients, to identifying, like we just don't go out on the commodity market and buy peanuts. We don't just go out on the commodity market and buy salt or honey. Like we have amazing organic single origin honey. We have we only use Jacobson sea salt, hand harvested sea salt from Oregon, and our peanuts are
versus like a big place like I mentioned that is mass producing this would just use like the least expensive iodized salt or whatever, right?
Probably, or they may even call out sea salt, but they may not tell you where it's from.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we definitely try not to compromise at any level of quality or sourcing. So that's always set us apart from the beginning, because the goal was just to make the best possible version of this food. And because I really believe that, any food can be kind of elevated to a higher level of taste and texture and just whatever it is that you're looking for in that food.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not everyone's looking for the same thing. But what I was looking for was that like super roasty flavor, and then little pops of the salt and the sweetness and a little bit of a coarse ground texture. And I wanted to know that the ingredients came from a good place and they were produced, in fair, clean conditions. And there was a story behind every ingredient that anyone who is buying that jar or that bar can feel good about supporting.
Okay, so another question, because there's another brand out there, and I'm going to mention them by name because I'm not beholden to anybody, but who I think just marketing wise, and maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't really know, but that brand Justin's that you see, right, is everything you're saying theoretically, but they somehow are like scaled to, you see them in every somewhat higher end supermarket in America. Are they doing those things, or are they, and I know you don't want to call them out, but maybe just say like what separates you from them?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I've met Justin, super nice guy. I met him way before I started Big Spoon.
Okay.
I was working as a consultant at the time as a staff writer, and I went to one of those natural food expos, and Justin's was a really new product at the time. I think this may be one of his first trade shows, and he was set up in Washington, D.C. at the Natural Products Expo, and I talked to him for a few minutes because I love peanut butter. I probably told him about my experience in Zimbabwe. But yeah, so Justin's, that's a great example of a company very different from us. So they use palm oil in every single recipe. And palm oil is a quote-unquote natural replacement for hydrogenated vegetable oils, which is basically a scientific word for Crisco. Hydrogenated rapeseed, cottonseed, linseed oil, which is blended into nut butters when they're produced and still warm, so that when they cool, the fats from that hydrogenated oil, which are solid at room temperature, bond with the natural nut oils, and they keep that oil from separating after it's sitting on a shelf for a while.
Okay.
So Justin's and a lot of other companies use palm oil because it does the same thing. Palm oil is solid at room temperature. You warm it up, you blend it into the nut butter when it's still warm, and then you let it cool, and that keeps the oil from separating over time. And to a lot of consumers, just people going to the grocery store, there's still a lot of education needed about this, but they see that oil separation and there's a negative reaction to that. They think maybe something's wrong, and so a lot of companies have prevented the oil from separating by mixing in an emulsifier like that. Now, palm oil is one of the leading, and some sources say the leading cause of deforestation in equatorial regions, specifically in Southeast Asia. There's a lot of information about this out there.
I know this sounds stupid, but palm oil comes from a palm tree, right?
Yeah,
okay.
It's a specific
It's
type of
from
palm
palm
tree.
olive, Matt. They take the palm olive lotion.
And make the oil,
No, it's from palm tree.
Yeah, it's a specific type of palm, but yeah, it's a palm. I've heard them called oil palms, and I am not a botanist or an expert on that, but I have read a lot about that industry, and we have a couple of blog posts up on our website that actually are some of the most read pages on our website in the history of Big Spoon Roasters are about the palm industry. And so that's just an example where a business, and I've met people that work at Justin's within the last year, and they're super great people, but that's an example where a business has, in my opinion, compromised on quality and sustainability in order to appeal to a mass market.
Were they not originally using palm oil when they first started?
I honestly don't know the answer to that, but I know they've used it for a very long time.
Well, after those shots were fired, that begs the question: what oils are you using then?
So most of our recipes don't have any added oils. It's just the nuts. Once they get milled or ground, you break those cell walls, and the oils kind of just start naturally coming out, and you emulsify all that. We still use a teeny tiny a bit of organic virgin coconut oil in our original peanut butter, just because I did in Africa, Zimbabwe, because I like how the coconut oil brings out a little bit of the sweetness, natural sweetness of the nuts and the honey.
But you say that as like a negative thing. Why is it? I mean, we
Just
harvest
it's not
coconut.
as pure. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, not that it's negative. It's just that I don't think any nut butter needs added oil.
Okay.
For its texture or for any other reason. Like any ingredient we use is either for taste or because it enhances the taste of another ingredient.
Okay.
Like we're not going to put something in there just to make it more convenient for people to stir it less.
Yeah. Or to look better in the packaging.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So no, we're proud of the coconut oil we source and use. But other than that, we don't add oil.
Well, so I want to know. We all grew up eating peanut butter, and we all peanut butter was ubiquitous, and then everyone developed a peanut allergy, right? And I'd say everybody, but a large contingency of people just developed this. You had to be well aware of that and had a focus on what that meant. Is there something just I know that peanuts themselves are legumes, right? They're not even technically a nut, right?
That's right.
They're totally different categories. So that if you're connecting it to things like pistachios and almonds and all that, those are nuts, cashews and all. So you're in a different category when you're actually doing peanuts versus all the other nut butters. And so you obviously, Big Spoon isn't exclusively a peanut butter company. You're doing everything. But what say you about all of the allergies, and how have you been able to kind of push through all of that?
Well, I just came from a peanut board, a national peanut board conference where there was a lot of information shared on allergies. It's really interesting how the medical advice has sort of reversed itself on how to deal with that. So yeah, there was, I think, an uptick in peanut allergies in the last few decades. But there have been some really interesting studies. A big one came out of Israel and the UK showing that with more exposure among children to peanuts earlier, you get reduced allergies later, basically. And so the
Don't tell that to my brother and his family. Well, sorry, I'm shots fired at my own family.
Yeah.
Let people have all the stuff when they're little, so that they can. It's like having a little bit of the vaccine of anything, right?
Yeah.
You have a little bit of the disease so that you can fight it.
Yeah, your body
later
knows
on
how to
you
deal
become
with it.
immune.
Yeah, that's why I know with my sister's kids, they said, "Oh, don't give them anything till they're one." And then it changed. When we had our kids, they're like, "No, that's okay. The only thing you're not supposed to give them is honey because you have botulism in honey."
Yeah. So yeah,
and bourbon.
Well, even that, I don't know.
You could
Just a little on the gums.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so, but, if you do have the peanut allergy, and some people have like a really severe version of that, like it is super dangerous. And so,
Right.
Even from our earliest farmers market days, people would come up and look at our almond butter and say, I have a peanut allergy, but can I have this? And I'm very clear about the fact that, no, absolutely not. It's made in the same facility. We do our best to, completely clean and sanitize between runs of peanuts and tree nuts, and even among particular tree nuts, but on every jar and on every bar package it says contains peanuts but may contain traces of almonds and other tree nuts. And so we just try to like communicate broadly and loudly about that. That's how we navigate it. Unfortunately, we're not able to have separate facilities for different allergens, and that's really what it takes to have a complete separation.
Is that what I know you mentioned earlier off mic, that you're raising money for a new facility? Is that part of the idea?
Well, we've needed more space for years, but we're still not going to be able to have separate facilities for different allergens. Maybe someday, but yeah, we've been leasing the same space in Durham for about 9 years, and it's been great. But we've outgrown it, and we're spending so much money on freight just to get in ingredients and packaging in small quantities because we don't have much storage space. And we've had to rent 2 off-site storage spaces over the last couple of years just to store, packaging and event stuff that we don't use every day. So a big reason for the need for more space is just so we can take advantage of those economies of scale of ordering, bigger lots of glass jars and bigger lots of lids and peanuts and almonds, and also so our team just has more room. Like we everybody wears or in production and shipping wears like a set of clean scrubs every day, and they have a changing room. But in our new space, we're going to have a bigger team room with individual changing stalls and lots of lockers and seating, and we're going to have like a wellness room for our team members so they can go in and whatever they want to do. If you want to exercise, if you want to do yoga, if you want to just put headphones on, if you want to take a nap, just a room dedicated to their wellness, and just a more ergonomic, I think, better flowing process. Because now I told somebody recently, like going through our space now is you feel like you're playing Pac-Man.
Yeah.
It's like you go around one corner just to get to another corner, and just to find another little corner, and okay, you got to let them squeeze past. And you've been in lots of kitchens, and you just kind of have to cobble together something that works to get your ingredients to where they get processed and then to where they get finished. So anyway,
Nice.
We need more space.
And so you did put up Indiegogo?
We have an Indiegogo campaign. It's called the Big Spoon Roasters Community Lift. There are 6 days left as of this recording, and it's gone well.
Today is the 26th of July, so when this comes out, you may have time or you may not. But thanks to those that did contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we looked at it as an opportunity to tell our story and tell our story about why we do what we do and how we do what we do and why we need more space. And we have such an amazing local community, obviously, of support and collaboration. But we also have customers all over the country that buy through our website and that are wholesale customers of us. And this was a way to just reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we're doing. If you're able to help, great. But just by buying our products and doing what you do every day, you're helping us in this journey.
Yeah, that's speaking of like having restaurants all over the country that support your stuff. I saw, and I was trying to remember the name of her actual restaurant, but Brooke Williamson of Top Chef fame has some fantastic restaurants all over California and such. And having been from California, but more specifically living in Playa del Rey with my wife and family, she has the Hudson House in Redondo, and then she has the Triple in Playa del Rey, and then there was Playa, which was Playa Provisions. I'm sorry, which is a really cool little spot. It had like a full bar and like a little whiskey bar in the back, and a smoothie area, and some retail, and some seafood, and like just all this cool stuff. Of course, didn't exist when I lived there, and then I moved away, and then it was like now the coolest thing ever. But going back to Playa just on vacation, I was there and we're hanging out, we're doing our thing, and we go into Playa Provisions. It's lovely. We're having this great food and drink. And I look over on the retail spot and I see Big Roasters, nut butters. I think it was like an almond butter or perhaps. And I laughed. I picked it up, showed Felicia. I'm like, look at this. We're all the way back in our old hometown, and now it's essentially like our new hometown next to Durham and Raleigh. sent over here. So just to, I highlight that you're all over the place. You're accessible, and Big Roaster or Big Spoon has definitely reached a larger and wider net. I assume that has something to do with your previous job before, when you did a lot of marketing for Counterculture and on the online side. Like that must be your wheelhouse that we are speaking to.
Well, I mean, I think it's been a combination of things. I think it was, definitely timing. When we started, no one was doing what we're doing. I mean, and I would argue no one's really doing what we're doing now. But, at the end of 2010, beginning of 2011, there was this huge still boom in American craft food goods, like, new craft bakeries, breweries, everything was popping up, and nobody was working with nut butters. I mean, that's one of the reasons we started this business, was because I craved what I couldn't have, and then I realized no one was doing it. And so, right out of the gate, Bon Appetit blogged about us, and then featured us in their, they actually featured my wife Megan's peanut butter cookie recipe in their Thanksgiving issue in our first year of business. And then they were like, nice. Oh yeah, she uses Mark's peanut butter, peanut pecan butter in this recipe. And then, that winter, Food and Wine magazine said our peanut pecan butter was one of the 7 best things they tasted all year.
Nice.
We were at a friend's house in Atlanta when that was published, and we didn't even have a proper website. I mean, we had like a landing page and a Twitter account and a little info@bigspoonroasters.com email address, no e-commerce, but all of a sudden my Gmail just exploded with like hundreds of messages. I mean, Harris Teeter and like all these, huge stores were like, how can we get pallets? And I'm like, well, I'm still working at Counterculture 5 days a week, and I'm doing this at night and just enough for the farmer's market on the weekends. But that was when we knew that, what we were doing was resonating with people in a big way, and in a way that, meant that, we could keep doing this as kind of a really hard but fulfilling hobby, or I could throw myself into this completely. And so it was just a few months after that I left Counterculture in the spring of 2012 to focus on this completely. And we've just grown one customer at a time. I try to just let the products do the talking, but I know you guys are wine guys. I think I read on the website, and you've forgotten more about wine than I'll ever know. But I really look at wine and like how wine is marketed, and the way there's a story behind the craft, how it's made. There's a story behind the agriculture. There's a story behind the tradition of the ingredients. And that's a lot of what we try to put into the way we approach nut butters and even bars. I mean, we're technically a packaged food, but I really try to not use the like CPG term that I hear so often to describe packaged foods in a store, because I feel like what we're doing is a smaller batch craft category that doesn't really fit into the mass market. And a lot of those little specialty stores like Playa Provisions, I think, have found us either through food media or, maybe, through word of mouth. Because, as a bootstrap business, we don't have a lot of marketing money. Like we put a lot of work into our marketing and like into the writing and the graphic design and so forth. But we buy very little ad space out there because we just don't have the cash to do it.
I was going to ask, so like, that's a question that I've heard a lot of our listeners when they're just talking to me and when we're just out and about talking. They're like, one thing I always want to know is when you're on your show and you're talking about how these guys get started and this idea and all that, it's like, okay, and then we just decided to do it. And then you cut to like 6 months later, now you're producing it. The first step, did you get a loan? Did you go to a bank? Did you have a little bit of like savings, or did you ask mom and dad, or like, how'd you just like take that first step?
Sure. Well, Megan and I are both very financially risk averse, and this was an unproven concept. Yeah. Completely unproven.
In a saturated market. I mean, with the GIFs of the world. Like, yeah.
Sure. And would anyone, pay $12, $15 for an 8-ounce jar of peanut pecan butter at the time?
Right.
So, I for years was really involved in slow food. I was an active volunteer in DC, and then when I moved down here, I became an active volunteer. And through the slow food community here, I got to know a lot of local chefs. And
explain that a little bit, though, just so people understand slow food.
Yeah, so Slow Food is an international nonprofit that was founded by Carlo Petrini in Italy, I believe in the early 80s, and it's a reaction to fast food.
Right.
When the globalized, homogenous fast food monster started to come to Europe and plant all their cookie cutter restaurants and cookie cutter cuisine, there was a backlash against that. And Carlo Petrini had a very eloquent but simple message that we need to preserve local food traditions, and Slow Food is the organization that will help lead that charge. And so I think it started out as a more of a political movement, and then early leaders of slow food in the U.S. were people like Alice Waters and Shea Panisse, Ben and Karen Barker. Were like this huge beacon of slow food energy here in the American Southeast, and little chapters popped up everywhere. When I moved here, Andrea Rusing of Lantern was the local chapter president. And Alex and Betsy Hitt, Peregrine Farm, who's longtime sellers at the Carborough Farmers Market.
Yeah.
They were very active, and I got to know them, and that became a big part of my social network here. And they were a great sounding board for this idea. I was like, I have this idea for a nut butter business, and here's a jar. Let me know, how's it taste? And everybody gave me amazing feedback, and they're like, you should definitely do this. Definitely apply to the farmers market. This is a perfect fit. And so I applied to the Carborough Farmers Market for 2011, and there were over 50 applications for one spot. I didn't think I'd get it, but we got it. And I did have a little savings, and I was definitely not going to leave my job at Counterculture. I told my boss that the founder, Brett, who I'm still friends with, and he's been a great mentor in many ways. I was like, hey, I have this idea. I'm going to do it. I'm going to work on it at night and on the weekends. You might hear about it, but I want you to hear it from me first. It's not going to. I'm not going to sacrifice anything that I'm doing here because I believe in what we're doing here. But I got to do this. I just have to. It's in my bones. And he's like, okay, cool. So anyway, I used a little savings and bought a nut mill motor, and then had a local metalsmith make the milling plates into a little bit of a coarser grind, because that's what I wanted. That was one of the things I loved about the peanut butter I made by hand in Zimbabwe. The first real money we spent was that, and then on branding with a local design firm that I worked with for years. They're called the Splinter Group. Carborough, those guys.
Well.
Good. So I worked with them really closely at Counterculture, and they're awesome people, and there was no question who I was going to work with on our first branding. And I had a real vision for how I wanted it to feel. I wanted our logo art to feel timeless, like pre-digital, like you could reproduce it with a letterpress or a stamp or etching without the use of digital technology.
Yeah.
Because I think that in many ways what we were doing was a response to the over-industrialization and over-homogenization of a product that was probably way better in the past, peanut butter. Anyway, they nailed it, and then I worked on a few recipes to have at the opening bell of the Carborough Farmers Market that spring. But yeah, it was just a little bit of savings, and then when I quit Counterculture, that income obviously went away. And thank you, Megan, my now wife, because she worked at Duke at the time and had a good job. She's a business school grad at Fuqua, and she was their director of admissions for about 9 years. So that's where she was when we met, and where she was also when we started Big Spoon. But we just decided to make her income work basically for all our basic needs while I was growing this business. And she would help me with every big decision, and anytime I needed to have a conversation about what to do with the business, she was right there and provided incredible insight from the beginning.
The Lamborghini out front, though, explain that.
Oh, you mean the 4Runner with the dent in the door?
Oh, you were parked right now. You know what? You were next to that Lamborghini. Sorry about that.
Well, I want to hear about how Food and Wine found you, how Bon Appetit found you, and to get more of that story. But we've talked a lot about Counterculture, and there's another great coffee in the room that needs to be spoken about a little bit.
Yeah, we were talking about Joe Van Gogh. We mentioned them earlier with Robbie, and such a great company that helps keep the lights on and the cameras on over here at the studio here at the kitchen. And we're talking about Joe Van Gogh coffee, and specifically this coffee that we're drinking today. You know, you were mentioning coffees from Africa and all. Coincidentally, we have the Kenya AA Karuthi blend with flavor notes of a little strawberry rhubarb pie, a little Asian pear and hibiscus. You really can't go wrong. The thing I really like about this particular coffee is that it's a light roast, so you really get so much of that flavor coming out there, and not just like the processing and all the roasting. We could probably speak to the level of roast of what you do with your nuts as we go through here, but this Kenyan blend is some of the best stuff that they have. It's got like light floral aromas, tones of fruit, and wine sometimes often present in this particular blend. So if you want to learn more about it or actually buy it and get it yourself, go to joevangogh.com. Check out the information. It's the Kenya AA Karuthi.
Yeah. And speaking of wine, Triangle Wine Company.
Oh, yeah. Who about those guys?
Yeah. For all your wine and beverage, beer, vermouth needs. Maybe, possibly, I know they sell some, dare I say, packaged goods, but they could have Big Spoon Roasters there.
I know.
So maybe we'll have to talk to Chris and Glenn and be like, hey, you guys should have these, because it's probably, peanut butter is a great wine snack.
I was going to say,
like
what do we drink with peanut butter? What's a good peanut butter wine, Matt?
I'm thinking, like, off the top of my head, Malbec.
Yeah. Something kind of big and juicy.
Yeah, big and juicy, not too much tannin.
I like that.
Morvedra would be great, or Monastrell from Spain.
Yeah.
All that you can get at the Triangle Wine Company. They also, if you use the NCFB pod promo code, they can give you a nice little discount, and you can go online and get curbside delivery, or they'll even deliver to you within a 10-mile radius of one of their stores. They have 4 locations. So go to trianglewineco.com for all your beverage, wine, vermouth, beer needs.
Yeah.
Cool. So our dogs are named Gruner and Rioja.
Oh, nice. Nice, Mark. All
So
right.
you're a wine snob or a wine geek a little bit.
We love wine, but we have no pretense about it. Yeah, we love it.
Well, when I start my wholesale import company, I'll have to consult you about where we go with that and how to direct that.
For sure.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about some of the varieties that you have, and then eventually I can get off into my tirade about almonds and how much they are ruining the world.
Tirade alert.
No, I'll just say the almonds take a lot of water, right? A lot.
Not as many as cows. Not as much as cows.
Oh, look at him with the quick retort. All right. So cows drink more water or consume more water
By factors of thousands.
beyond
Because you have to
almonds.
have grass for cows.
Yeah, so I know I'm very familiar with the criticism of the almond and the water and the water intensive agriculture. And there's a lot of, like, I think probably unsustainable almond agriculture out there. We use only almonds, this heirloom variety of almond called the Mission almond that was discovered in Texas about 100 years ago. And we work with a grower group in California called Treehouse. And they actually have amazing water reuse, sustainable irrigation, and they're also certified pollinator friendly. But the Mission variety almond uses less water than a typical, like, nonpareil almond. So our almonds are less water intensive anyway. But I like having this debate about almonds, because it's like, okay, how are you using almonds? If you're using almonds for almond milk, then it's still a way more sustainable choice than dairy milk. If you're using almonds as a snack for protein and healthy fats, it's a way more sustainable in terms of water use choice than beef or any.
Well, this is my one response to you, retort as a child of the 80s growing up in Northern California.
Wow,
Which has
you're really going to challenge Mark on this. He seems like a pretty knowledgeable guy.
As a child of the 80s growing up in Northern California, which has an abundant water source, Big Almond lobbied that they needed more reservoir usage of the water that was there. And so the story that was told to all of us young children is that you can't take showers on these days, no baths, you couldn't do this, you can't water your lawn here, you can't do all this stuff because we're in a water shortage, folks, and that we have to send the water down to Los Angeles, we have to do all these other things. That wasn't true. They signed a big deal because of money, because Big Almond said we need more water usage so that we can grow our plants. You know what I mean? We can make more water here, or make more almonds. So it was sold to us that we were running out of water. We weren't running out of water. We were just reallocating water so that a independent business could make more money and then thus pay more taxes into the company, into the system.
Safe.
But we thought, like, as a little kid, I was panicked that we were running out of water. Like, will I be able to drink water tomorrow? And all of that was all well and good and fear-based, but that's why almonds strike a chord in my brain.
That is so legit, and I'm sure I would feel the same way. Yeah, that anytime you put big in front of an industry, like big almonds,
Right.
big peanut butter, whatever,
Right.
big,
It sounds nefarious.
they're not going to be acting in the best interest of the community. I would bet.
And we're
What was
also
the stat?
talking that this isn't like the local Big Spoon roasters, oddly enough. Big Spoon. When Big Spoon comes in, yeah, I thought like this was a utensil brand. We were bringing in here Big Spoons, talking about no more forks, folks. No, but you do have it's
Evil
funny,
fork.
It's in your own name. You're
funny.
Big Spoon. But yeah, I mean, but you do have the Jifs and the Peter Pan, all those big companies, and those make up. I mean, you talk about the big peanut butter companies and big almond companies and big, like, even just Kellogg's and Post and all those, like, cereal companies. They're basically just making grain and, like, they're making feed for America. You know what I mean? It's like, this is like cattle feed for humans is kind of like how they're producing this stuff and taking up all of, like, you know, grassland and farmland so that we can just make more feed for people to eat. It's not about what you're doing at, ironically enough, the small Big Spoon. You are making the Demitas spoon. You are making really, really thoughtful, and I mean that's why you're here. Like, we enjoy what you're doing. This is really good stuff. So let it be known to anyone out there. I'm not putting the kibosh on what you're doing. It's just about what Almonds did, and it was more of a financial move that was made in the 80s.
Yeah, it sounds more like a big almond specific problem than as a referendum on almonds as a whole. But but what is the stat
Almonds
that
are
you
delicious.
gave me? What is the stat that you gave me about how much
Mark
water?
could probably speak to it better than I can, but I think like to make one almond, it's like 2 gallons of water or something like that. It's something really big, and then obviously to make almond milk, it's like 1 cup of almonds to make a gallon of milk or whatever it is. It's like, so you extrapolate how much water you're actually using. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But to your point, yeah, if you want to go into all the other things that we consume, my argument though is that with Big Cow, it's not just dairy. We also use it for meat. We use it for everything. The leather chairs that Matt put into his brand new car and all the other things. We use the whole animal.
Faux leather, actually.
But anyhow, like there's a lot that we utilize with the dairy and cow side of the industry.
Yeah. No, but I've never thought of that before about how much water it takes to raise cows and that, because it's the grass, but then again with regenerative farming, right? Like apparently we could save the world if 10% of the farms.
Totally. Yeah. And just back to what you were saying a minute ago about, big peanut butter, and we're a shadow front for the Big Spoon industry. We're all
Ladles unite.
Exactly. I think this stat was from a couple of years ago, but 95% of the peanut butter market is owned by 5 brands.
Yeah.
That's like the bourbon market. Right?
Yeah, and so Justin's, they've been owned by Hormel for years.
Okay.
The meat packing company.
Yeah.
So, okay, I do want to get back to that question about Bon App and Food and Wine, but before, because I still like, I think when I buy peanut butter, it's maybe like, let's say the Publix brand or whatever, or the local brand, which I'm sure is being made by one of those 5 companies. But it's still, a lot of times it still does have the oil on top. So does the palm oil just eventually seep out, or are they not using it in those cases? Or
You might be buying palm oil free peanut butter.
Okay.
I mean, you very well could be buying like a Publix brand, they might call natural or something, where it doesn't have palm oil or hydrogenated oil. So yeah, that's very common.
okay, cool.
And yours, it does actually on the side of your label, it does recommend that you do stir yours, right? And because you do want to mix it up, and it will separate maybe after a period of time or so.
Yeah, it says oil separation is natural. Just stir thoroughly to the bottom of the jar, or stir well to the bottom of the jar. So that's key. And so we use whole spices, and like in our pistachio crunch, we have whole pieces of pistachio in there, and so those pieces will sink down as the oil rises. And so if that jar is left on a shelf for months somewhere, all the pistachio chunks and stuff will kind of be in the bottom third of the jar. And so you really want to, stir that up from the bottom so you get the texture that we're going for.
That's cool. But completely shelf stable though, right? Like, you could put this in your bunker, Matt, for the end of the world, but it lasts, right? I mean, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, we put a best by date of 1 year on every jar after the day that it's made, but it's definitely safe and good well beyond that.
Cool. Yeah. All right. So do you have any idea how Food and Wine hurt? Did you have to submit for that or did...
So part of it was my network, my position at Counterculture. And so I did marketing and communications and media relations there for years. And, I was the person that New York Times called if they needed a comment on what's happening with the coffee industry, along with like 4 or 5 other marketing people at other big coffee roasters around the country. And through that network, I got to know a couple of food writers that were based in New York. And when I would go up for, coffee events and stuff, sometimes I'd hang out with them. And one of them, I told about this business I was starting. I was like, I'm doing this, on the side. And he was like, cool, send me a jar. And I did. And I know if he didn't like it, he would have told me.
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, this is awesome. Please tell me when you're selling this. I want to write about it.
No, you took opportunity. Like everybody, not many people have opportunity and they don't take advantage of it. But you were like, I at least know this person, and you still had to have a really good fucking product.
Well, I was like, if anything, I felt like he would tell me like that's way too salty, or it needs more, whatever.
But just say nothing,
or just say nothing. Exactly.
Oh, that would be even worse, though.
That is worse. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it would be worse, but. Thankfully, he was like, dude, this is awesome. Please tell me when you're actually, selling this. I want to write about it. And so I did. I was like, we're starting at the farmer's market. And so he blogged about it. And I'm pretty sure Food and Wine, because everybody reads everybody, they saw that.
Okay.
And then we got an email from a Food and Wine assistant editor. And she was like, can I please get a jar? And this is funny because I sent a jar up and it was crickets. I mean, for months.
Yeah.
This was like early summer of 2011, and we heard nothing from Food and Wine. And I'm like, do I follow up? A couple months later, I did follow up, and I was like, hey, did that jar land? Because tracking says, it's landed on this day. And nothing. It wasn't until the December issue came out, and we opened it, and there was a giant photo.
That's amazing.
Of the jar that I sent. It was like took up this much space on the page.
It's like your song on the radio.
And it was like the 7 best things we tasted this year. And there it was.
I'd almost rather find out that way that we just hit it big, because getting that letter in the mail is not as big as opening up the magazine and seeing, holy shit, we're getting a big spread of the magazine.
But the story with the Thanksgiving issue of Bon Appetit, so they blogged about us.
Yeah.
And so great. And so Megan was like, let me send a thank you to Bon Appetit for blogging about us. And so she's a great baker, and so she baked these peanut pecan oatmeal cookies with my peanut pecan butter, and we sent them in a nice little tin up to the Bon Appetit offices, and didn't know if we'd hear anything. Obviously people send them samples and stuff, but this was like homemade cookies to a person. And so my phone rang one day with a New York number like a week after that, and I answered, and it was like, hey, this is so-and-so. I'm the test kitchen editor for Bon Appetit. Can you tell me if that was an original recipe for those cookies? And I was like, I honestly don't know. My girlfriend baked them, but let me check. And so I'm texting her, and I'm like, yes, they are. They're original recipe. And she's like, we'd like to run that. Can you,
so cool.
Send us that recipe, please, and some of the peanut pecan butter that you use so our test kitchen can work it out up here. And so we did, and it turned out they featured it in the Thanksgiving issue that year, and they did a cool little illustration of the jar, and I was just this little sidebar. It was really cool that Megan got the attention for that cookie recipe.
How cool is that?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the usefulness of your product and how others can use it too, because I even said to you off mic before we got on, like, I would like to own some, big spoon roasters in large quantities so I can use it, like in my bar program, in my smoothie program, in my coffee program. And I assume I'm not the only one that wants to be able to do this. So you do sell wholesale in large amounts to places.
Absolutely. Yeah, we sell wholesale in general, like in our 13-ounce jars. We have a mini TSA approved flight friendly jar. And we do 4-pound bulk, like bucket, pail, and an 8-pound. And then we do a 40-pound bucket that is mainly bought by like bakeries and things that are using our nut butter in like a bigger production batches of stuff. But the most popular bulk size is the 8-pound, which is a 1-gallon container. And we sell that, restaurants, bakeries, cafes, all over the country.
Yeah, you want to do like a killer smoothie, and you're like, let's blueberries and almond butter and a banana or whatever. Like, it just sounds excellent, especially to do it with the flavors that you already have going on. Like, I'm looking at this jar that you brought, the pistachio crunch with almond butter. Like, yeah, that needs to be turned into something that I can drink later. but I mean, it sounds amazing.
I think I could just eat it with a spoon.
Oh, no doubt. I'm saying, but there's so much usefulness you can get out of it. So to do that, you just go on the website or so, or like.
Yeah, go on the website. There's for you, I'll like follow up with you and give you save you one step. But yeah, you can go to our website. There's a wholesale form. You just click on that. Like if you're a business owner and you have a food business and you want to use our nut butter or bars in any way, there's a wholesale link, and there's a little short form you fill out, and then we follow up and take it from there.
That's so cool. I mean, I love what you're doing. So just speak to some of the array of the things that you offer, like the different items, so people can kind of visualize like what you're selling right now. Sure.
Yeah. Right now we have 16 different nut butters that we package in our flagship 13-ounce jar. So we do the original peanut butter recipe that is inspired by what I made in Zimbabwe. So that's fresh roasted peanuts, raw organic honey, sea salt, and coconut nectar. We do a peanut pecan butter blend. We do a maple cinnamon peanut pecan butter blend. Some of our almond butters, the pistachio crunch almond butter is really popular. We do a chai spice peanut almond butter blend that I actually created for our wedding as a wedding favor because Megan was drinking a lot of chai tea at the time. And we have chocolate sea salt almond butter, a Fiji ginger almond butter. That's one I'm particularly proud of. To my knowledge, it was the first nut butter to feature any kind of crystallized ginger in it. And it took me a really long time to find the ginger because most crystallized ginger that we find here is from China, and that's about all you can find out about it. There's not really a lot of transparency in that supply chain. But I found this project called the Fiji Ginger Project, where this cooperative of growers are growing this ginger, and they're crystallizing it on site with sugarcane that they're growing. And then there's an importer in California bringing it in. So that's the only ginger that we use. And then we do a toasted coconut almond butter with house toasted coconut chips that we blend in with coconut nectar and sea salt. So it's like coconut two ways with almond butter. It sounds like it might be sweet, but it's actually not very sweet. You just get like a amazing crunch from that coconut. Then we do some cashew butters. We do a cashew butter with coconut nectar and sea salt. And Megan's favorite is a lemon coconut cashew butter, which is a fresh roasted, finely milled cashews with a real dehydrated lemon juice and coconut chips and sea salt.
Where do you get your cashews from?
So our cashews come from a cooperative in Vietnam that is fair labor certified, and we get them directly imported through a company in the Pacific Northwest. So there's a big problem with unfair labor cashews.
Yeah,
and it's pretty widely documented, and so that was important to us when we were finding a cashew source. And we're looking at a source in Brazil as well that looks really good, but most of them come from Vietnam.
Yeah. You have to have a pretty warm climate to make cashews, right?
Yeah, cashew trees are crazy. I don't know. We do an illustration of one on that bar right there. But the cashew, it's called the cashew apple. It's like this giant fruit, and there's one teeny little cashew on the end of that. And that's one of the reasons they're more expensive is just the harvesting. It takes a lot of work. And the cashew apple evidently is really delicious, but it doesn't travel or preserve. They can't figure out how to preserve it to actually sell the fruit fresh. But wherever they're grown, you can eat them.
Huh.
Also, cashews are toxic and related to poison ivy if you don't cook them in some way. So
I've heard about that.
If you ever see raw cashews, like in a grocery store bulk bin, they're not actually raw. They've been steam pasteurized, or roasted in some way.
Yeah, like don't go eating cashews in the wild.
No.
So for all those like health nuts that are eating raw nuts, cashews are actually not the ones. Okay,
Yeah.
good tip.
In just just a very broad overview, not about health benefits or anything, just flavors. What's kind of like the separation, would you say, from using a peanut to an almond to a cashew? Like, and why? What's the purpose of having the different ones?
Yeah, that's a great question. Peanuts have, to me, more versatility in terms of the roast level. Like they hold, like coffee, they hold a roast really well. I think it's the fat composition in them, and like you can roast a peanut pretty dark and it still tastes amazing. It just tastes like a dark roasted peanut.
Yeah.
In my opinion, almonds are much less forgiving. An almond you have to just hit just right to get that like little bit of sweetness that comes out of a good almond. So that's what I look for in almond, is almost so Mission almonds are mostly bought by the Mars Corporation, those heirloom almonds that we use, and they're used in Mars bars. You can't, they're ugly, like an ugly tomato. That's why you don't see them in bulk bins. They hide them in the bars, but we love them. But anyway, it's got that like almost candy-like sweetness without anything else if you get a perfectly roasted almond. And then cashews are the mildest flavored nut, in my opinion. They take a really light roast, and it's a texture thing with cashews. It's just a really nice, thick, fatty texture.
Yeah, it's more creamy, if anything.
Yeah, it's a great blank canvas for whatever else you want to blend into it. I love pistachios. Pistachio butter by itself is challenging. I think it's a little too strong. Like that pistachio flavor just overwhelms anything else. But as a highlight, as a supporting ingredient, I think it's really delicious. Pecans, also, I like to roast those a little darker. Same thing with walnuts. There's something about those tree nuts and all the surface area there that I feel like you get more of a richness with a dark roast that you lose if you don't roast them very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, a couple of things, and I know we got to get out of here, but first of all, so if I just want, like an 8-ounce jar as a consumer, I can order it directly from you, or you're finding it in your specific wholesalers and retailer?
Yeah, so 13-ounce jar is our flagship size that you'll see in most retailers. And we're in a lot of stores in the area, Whole Foods Market, Weaver Street Market, a lot of smaller specialty stores as well. So you can always contact us if you want to find a local retailer near you.
Okay. So you can't order directly from...
you can order from our website.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Yeah.
If you want.
That's probably the best way.
If you want to get, it's always going to be the freshest because we're making it to order, every day, and the stuff that we ship out to our web customers are coming like right from our production and finished goods that we keep there on site. We don't use another company to fulfill our web orders. We do all that ourselves. And that's also where you can find the greatest variety of our products. It's bigspoonroasters.com.
Yeah, you can get whatever you want. You're not beholden to the retailer. I hate to end on this note, but it's an important thing to talk about because in this day and age, business, global supply chain is a problem. So even when you're getting from these fair trade, people are buying nuts from around the world, I have to imagine the price is driven up, your ability to get product is being compromised. And then what do you do? Because people are, as you said, they're already paying a premium because these are natural ingredients. So how does that work out business-wise? Like I assume at some point you have to pass that cost on to the consumer.
Yeah, we've mostly absorbed all the cost increases that have come in the last couple of years. And there have been a lot associated with freight, with packaging. Glass has been a big challenge for us. We will not package and we won't put our jars that go on shelves in plastic and let it sit there. And the steel lids. So we've absorbed most of that. We had a price increase less than a year ago on all of our most premium nut butters that use almonds and cashews as the base, basically, tree nuts as the base. It was a very small price increase. That
like to the end consumer, it would be like a quarter or something like that.
On a jar, exactly. It would, a quarter or less. We got a little bit of pushback on it, but most people understood. I mean, prices are going up everywhere, and I think because we kept pricing stable for the majority of our products, I think people appreciated that. But I mean, we're still absorbing cost increases all the time. I mean, I don't know when the supply chain issues will end, but I know from a lot of other peers that are making food and packaging it, that we're all going through the same thing right now.
Yeah, we're experiencing some of the worst inflation we've ever had, but it's a product of being shut down for a year. I mean, come on, let's
but
be
also
honest.
not having any significant inflation for a long time, and interest rates for vehicles and for houses being super low, so everyone has this inflated money.
Right. Yeah, well, thank you, Mark, for coming on. Like, I've been a huge fan of your product. Really, I think like it was the first year I moved here. I had some of your nut butter, and I was just like, oh, this is awesome. And so it's always been a staple in the house. We eat it all the time. It's fantastic. I'm glad that we finally got a chance to meet. And I want to start using this over at Crafton in our little smoothie bar that we're opening. Little selfish plug right here. Do it. We're going to start doing smoothies out of the cafe coming up soon, because why not? We can do it, and it's delicious, and put out a killer product. So
another good reason to go to Crafton. Yeah. So, well, Mark, thank you so much. It's really inspirational to talk to you, and thanks for sharing your story and your product with us. So for all of you out there, go check out Big Spoon Roasters. Eat it or put it in a smoothie. You will eat and drink extremely merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NC F&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.